Hi, this is Stephen King, and welcome to the last night of The Shining, the final chapter.
This is Stephen Weber.
This is Boyd Shermis, the visual effects supervisor.
This is Mick Garris, the director of The Shining, and we've had the wind-up of Part 1, we've had the revelations of Part 2, and now Part 3 is where all of the elements hit the fan. And I think this is, to me, the most potent of the three. I like a lot of things about the whole show, but the intensity of this is what's really exciting to me, to be able to take it as far as we did, and as horrifyingly as we were able to do on television was quite lucky. So one of the most demanding things was the ability to do the topiary. And puppetry could only take us so far. We really need to actually pay off, as in the book, the moving topiary lions and actually put Danny in danger with them and see that it's more than just something in somebody's mind. So we turned to Boyd Shermis to create those things.
Indeed, the topiary was very challenging for us. We had to make these creatures move and walk and be motivated in such a way that they really did create that suspension, and suspense rather. And part of the difficulty of doing the topiary, they had to have joints as these lions and various animals were jointed, and they had to be able to move and crawl and sort of crouch. But the real difficult part, I think, was creating this, the fill, the leaves, and sort of the the bouncing of the leaves as these animals moved around, and to really make them feel like they were alive. Another difficult challenge in doing the topiary, I think, was having them travel through the snow. You know, we had shot plates where the snow was nice and smooth, and we had to make them leave tracks and kick the snow up as they moved, and to be able to blend in with the snow environment.
What's going on? What is that broken glass? What have you been doing?
It's after Danny, Jack. Come on. Danny! 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 Hi, Mom!
You were recreating the topiary that Steve Johnson's company had made on wireframes and all that. Did you get plans from them and then work off of those?
Yes, in fact, we did get plans, and we scanned some of the wireframes that they were using. You know, they built theirs with a base wire mesh, and we kind of matched that as accurately as we could in the 3D environment, and then built the leaf structure on top of that to match as well as we could again. The joints were matched per their puppetry, and everything pretty well matched as well as we could do it.
And these were among the few storyboarded sequences. So when you're working with the visual effects, that's something everybody has to be on the same page about.
Yeah, and in as much as we were preparing to intercut the live action puppetry with the CG animals, they had to be pretty closely matched, yeah.
Really closely matched. The first time I actually met Stephen King as regards to the work was on a movie called Sleepwalkers. And this was a feature film that Columbia did, and Steve had written the original screenplay. And they were looking for a director for this, and I had met with them, was told that it was going to be me. They had to meet with another director as a formality, and they hired the other director. And when that director tried to take it to the planet of Sleepwalkers and made rather huge changes that nobody else was interested in, they decided mutually to part the ways. And I got a call to come in and have a lunchtime meeting, and did not know that I was spending the rest of the day there because I was starting pre-production. So no one told me I'd been hired until I already was there. And we really got along over the phone. And we met face-to-face on the set, and we had a really good time with it. Steve particularly liked the director's cut that only he and the studio saw. And from there, we went on to doing The Stand together. We really had a great time working together. And on The Stand, he was around for about 2/3, maybe 3/4 of the shoot. And nothing is happier than a set with Stephen King on it. He's such a great source of inspiration and fun, and he's like a big kid, you know. He really loves to play. And The Stand was so successful, he asked me, would I be interested if The Shining came to be? And of course, I said no. No, I would jump at the chance to work with Steve at any time.
I'm a fan of films that disturb on a psychological level. I'll jump and start like everybody else when a madman jumps out from behind a couch or out of a door or something with a knife. That's scary, but I think that's an easy fright. This movie worked on a very slow but steady psychological level where people became more and more creeped out, I guess. And so by the time they got to the shocks, the kind of obligatory jumping out at you with a knife moments, people were quite scared. But I'm a fan of films like Repulsion that Roman Polanski directed and things that work on a more psychological level.
I've kind of been associated with the horror, sci-fi, thriller genre. And basically, I think it's all come from the success of originally Sleepwalkers and then The Stand. My affiliation with King has made for some successful collaborations, and anytime you're successful in one field, that's how you are defined. And I'm certainly proud of the work within the genre, and I love this genre, although it's going through a rather weak time right now. It's an area that exercises things that are deeply ingrained in all of us. It's like, this is an old correlation, but it's like a roller coaster where you experience the thrill without the threat, the excitement without the danger of actually hurting yourself, to go right up to the fire and put your finger in and not get burned. I think everyone has deep-seated fears, and when you can confront fears, whether it's through literature or cinema or any other way, it's exciting and exhilarating and revelatory. And all of those things are within the genre. I would rather not be defined by the genre, though it's probably too late. I have done a couple things in the last couple of years that are not in the horror genre. I did a legal thriller based on a Steve Martini novel called The Judge, and just did a pilot called Lost in Oz that's also not horrific, although it is chock-a-block with visual effects and fantasy elements. This clock was going to play a much bigger part in The Shining than it does in the final cut. This prop cost, I think it was $12,500 to build, and I believe there were two of them. Maybe there was only one, but our assistant director was always announcing, please keep your distance from this clock. It cost $12,500. And you wouldn't know it to look at. I mean, it's a great prop. But in this scene, as Danny goes into his trance, the wood choppers, it was going to morph into a scene of Jack Torrance being the log that's being chopped by the wood choppers. We shot the elements, but it was cut before we ever finished that. It was a blue screen sequence, and it was going to be built into this, and we never did that. So that's a deleted scene you won't be seeing, because we never finished the visual effects. But I really like this going into this fantasy here, where we go through the clock. One of the things I tried to do, and we were not able to do that, was rather than using dissolves or wipes for transitions, I wanted to do what I called an uncontrolled morph, where rather than dissolving through, you would morph through, do a CGI morph. But you can't do an uncontrolled morph. You have to assign point A to point B in the B side of the dissolve or morph or fade.
This is Bill Corso again, makeup artist, and little scenes like this little nightmare with Weber, were some of our funnest things. There are a lot of them scattered throughout the movie, and I remember Weber was so excited whenever he can change his face, and we do a lot of it at the end of part 3, but he loved the idea of being able to, transform, do a Lon Chaney where he could transform his face, and And that was a great example of us going really extreme.
You can see him come to life there, like really being charged by it. He loved going into the makeup trip.
Please come.
Now, this scene is supposed to take place in Miami. It's actually Denver, and that's Shawnee Smith, who was in the stand, has a small part here. Behind them, at that table in the glasses, is a British author named Peter James, who wrote a book that I did a television film based on. And next to him is a photographer named Richard Peterson.
Now, Melvin Van Peebles, if you don't know, was really a preeminent filmmaker in the United States and in Europe. He wrote and directed this bizarre film called Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song, which was the first film that had a hero in it who was black, who was truly empowered. And he had a huge following in Europe and still does. He actually directed a movie called Watermelon Man with Godfrey Cambridge, again in 1970. Godfrey Cambridge and Estelle Parsons, which was a critically praised comedy about a white racist, a bigot who wakes up one morning and he's black. It's really hilarious. So for me, working with him on this movie was a privilege. He's a real character, too. He's very smart and very worldly, and we all felt very lucky that he agreed to do the film.
This shot was actually shot in Miami here with a double for Melvin Van Peebles so that we could get the Miami skyline. So we weren't there for that. But now we are in the Denver airport shooting it as the Miami airport here.
Passengers should now be aboard the aircraft.
This is Bill Corso. One of my favorite memories of the movie, real quick, is just that Stephen King was hanging around a lot at this time. And when we were shooting this particular scene, we were shooting right next to like the shops, the little restaurants and shops. And there was a little bookstore in the Denver airport. And we were looking at the books, and you go to the Stephen King section, just to check everything out, make sure they have enough copies of everything. And Stephen came walking in, and he walked over to the rack of books, and we go, "Hey, look, Stephen, look at it. They got every title." And he just would take a book off the counter and off the shelf, and he'd start signing them. And he signed every book that was on the shelf.
I've seen him do that in other places too. And when he went on his cross-country motorcycle ride, that resulted in the book Desperation, he had gone into... I was scouting Nevada when we were planning on doing Desperation, which still might happen, but I don't know when. And I stopped into a bookstore in a small town in Nevada, and I noticed the Stephen King section. I went back there, and I saw they were all signed. He had been there on his motorcycle and signed all these things. A little out-of-the-way podunk town.
He reads... The most thing I respected about him is that he reads... and I never saw him without a book in his hand, that he was always reading somebody else's work, or he was writing. And that was the two things I was most impressed with, that he was always constantly up on what was going on in other authors. It was fascinating.
I don't drink.
There's no question that January 5th, the last day, signals something major is about to happen. And that was in the script. I mean, we have dates on here that pop up here and there. But the last day, pay attention, sit up, watch what's happening, because it's going to all happen now.
It was fun playing this role at these points where he really kind of steps off the cliff, kind of starts to hallucinate and flip out as he is now. But, I was still wrestling with trying to keep it believable. What would happen if I was really seeing these things? It's difficult sometimes, but still, it was fun to get to this point. Fun to play this type of thing, this real thirst. And it was fun to play those scenes where he gets really violent and starts breaking stuff, too. I don't get a chance to break as much stuff in real life.
This was great stuff. Some of the first stuff that Weber did, and it's nice to have a little bit different location for the action to take place within. this is the mirror that King looked into where he got the entire idea for the book at this time. I like, again, using the theatricality of the lighting here, taking little lights under all the bottles of liquor that we dial up their brightness, and it's just kind of this magic Disneyland of liquor that calls him to come and imbibe. It's almost like Alice in Wonderland, drink me, and mother and son in a very kind of pastoral mode here, and Danny hears it all. I think we're now seeing the point of no return. I think once he's offered the drink and accepts it from Grady, the dead bartender and caretaker of the great Overlook Hotel, and Danny sees it, there's no turning back for Jack.
As an actor, I think my flaw is that I want to be liked too much. And by that I mean I rarely submerge myself into a character for fear that I won't interact with the crew enough, and therefore they won't like me enough. There have been times, especially when doing a play. Whoa, you know what? That scared the hell out of me just now, actually. Something just shot out of me, I think. That scared me.
This mask is not a store-bought mask. This was made by Steve Johnson and Company. And I think it's a really effective, really creepy mask.
That was John Durbin as Horace Derwent in the rubber wolf mask. That scared Danny and me just now watching it. Oh, and there again.
Oh, Dick, please, please.
It's really hard for me to remember sometimes what was shot where. And there's the bookstore.
That may be the bookstore, yeah.
That's the one at the Denver airport.
Please, please, come. It's my father. It's my daddy.
You know, it's funny, just from a simple makeup standpoint, you see how the blood is smeared all over his nose. It happens in part one where Danny says, "Oh, I'm sorry, I made your nose bleed," when he hits him when the lights explode in the car. But him having a mustache and a beard, even though we had bloodied up his nose, you couldn't see that his nose was bloody.
Which is why I had him use a white handkerchief.
Yeah. So I think that was one of the, and smearing it around his nose was like another way to, simple little things, sometimes the hardest.
I'm not the type of actor that submerges himself too deeply in a role, although I respect actors who do. I've tried it myself, and while it's really exciting, I guess it's too frightening for me to go too deep into that area. I did a production once of Death of a Salesman in Cleveland, and I decided to take that route, and I ended up kind of losing my mind for a little while, having panic attacks and stuff. It was just too much. I like to remain acceptably superficial.
What's great is we were able to get some real big band music. Some of it's imitation library music that sounds like the real thing. But Weber his father was, I believe, an artist manager in New York. And so he was very well versed in show business lore that precedes and predates him. So he really knew Chattanooga Choo Choo and all these songs, and knew all of the lore about the 50s and 60s in ways you would constantly be surprised by. His first real drunken scene is a very potent moment for what's to come. And again, there's the lamp, the flame in the foreground, the hot lights behind him. The liquor is more brightly lit than he is. This is a very simple trick that I've done a couple of times. It's a pan where all of the ghosts were standing behind him, and then I panned the camera and did it again with the ghosts all gone, and made the cut in the middle of the pan, which is undetectable, and it's the cheapest effect and very effective, so to speak. And the cheap hand on the shoulder gag is required in all films that are of a horrific nature. I would have lost my DGA card had I not included it.
What is your name?
Grady, sir. Delbert Grady.
Well, Delbert. Just one is no longer in my vocabulary. I've got a lot of lost time to make up for, and it's been a dry century.
Yes, sir. I meant, may I pour you one more before you go on to the ballroom, sir?
Why would I want to go into the ballroom, Grady?
Now, this actor Stanley Anderson, who plays Grady, the bartender, is just wonderful. I mean, physically, he's 180 degrees from the Grady in the Kubrick film. And again, we tried to not do things the same whenever we thought about it.
At this point, Jack has more things in his life that are pulling him towards madness than towards sanity. And so even though he was sobered up by seeing all those kind of Night of the Living Dead type people in the mirror, he's instantly drawn back into this kind of spectral, insane world where he's conversing with a ghost and drinking possibly real booze, who knows? Could be ghostly liquor.
I remember reading the book and then reading the script, and Stephen King was very specific about what scenes, when we saw the ghosts, because there are some scenes where you see the ghosts and the apparitions and they appear normal. But Stephen King was very specific in a lot of the scenes where when they would appear normal and when they would appear with this ghastly pallor. And that happened to be one of them. And he just said that, Grady had this undead, gaunt, like yellowish, gaunt skin look about him.
There's no liquor up here.
There is now.
I remember thinking that Rebecca was not going to work out for the miniseries, and back before there ever was a Kubrick film, or long before there was a miniseries, people would say, "Who do you see as playing Wendy Torrance?" And I said, Rebecca De Mornay. She looks like the blonde cheerleader from 1957, and here I am. I thought Mick actually made me look pretty good here. I wanted to look a little bit like Cab Calloway, and I really wanted to wear the white ice cream suit. And I said, do something for once where I don't look like a total dweeb. And so he got me this wonderful band leader's outfit. There are a lot of interesting people. That's David Scow, the science fiction writer there. These people are lip-syncing to the Andrews Sisters. There's a joke about the name of the orchestra, GC, it says. That's the Gage Creed Orchestra. Gage Creed was the little boy in Pet Sematary who died in the road.
We shot this all with everybody normal and having a great time. Then we shot it this way, which was our Carnival of Lost Souls look, where everybody was deathly pale and sickly. And then we shot it again where everybody was a rotting corpse. So I actually had 5 makeup people to help me out, but I was lucky enough, because there wasn't anything going on in LA, I was lucky enough to get 3 Academy Award winners to come help me.
Yeah, that helped.
And those were, as a matter of fact, she was done by a 3-time Academy Award winner, her makeup. So
was that V?
It was V. Neal, yeah. And in a sense, we were very lucky that the 5 of them could do the work of 15 or 20. Although they cursed me for it afterwards. I promised them that if we were lucky, we'd get Emmys for it, which we lucky enough did.
Yes. Well, one thing that's difficult here, I wanted them to be surrounded by everybody, but we had them on a moving platform so that they could be drifting through this ghostly crowd without having to move their legs to do that, and the platform required enough room around them so that the other dancers couldn't be up close. It's another reason I shot a lot of this long lenses, to bring the blurred background people closer to them. Now, this must have been fun for you to cut, Pat.
This whole sequence was one of the most fun pieces in the movie, and also one of the most powerful, coming up a little bit when he goes back and forth between this and reality. I find this to be a very powerful sequence.
My God, it's him.
Speak, doggy. Speak. Come on, jump.
It's really him.
Harry? Of course it's him. It's his
I think she so pegged the period style of delivery of a 1930s, 1940s movie star, and that kind of feel, the glamour, the makeup is just great, the hair, the wardrobe. Oh, I should definitely talk about Warden Neal, who is the costume designer on the show. What a magnificent job he did. They created, there's the swish pan effect again, same thing, although the camera had to have a rope to come to a stop, and it never stopped abruptly enough. There's always a little bounce on there. But the wardrobe, most of it was created. Some of it was rentals and the like, but just unbelievably sexy on everybody, and so stylish and gorgeous. The music number with Steve, we had to work a lot with Steve to really get to relax into it, you know, to make it feel real for everybody. And a lot of the extras, it was kind of difficult for them to lip sync perfectly and all of that.
This is the moment I love, when he walks across the room here and he just pops out into the real world.
After he bumps into Preston Sturgis.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. It's a simple effect, but, you know, it's an effective effect.
It's a very telling shot. It's great.
Yeah.
Tell you something profound, my pal.
This is some of the best dialogue I ever wrote. Hey, folks, let's listen.
Eric Livingston Seagull wrote that.
If you say so, sir.
I do.
Allow me, sir. Whiskey, wasn't it? Water back on the side?
No. No ice either. So it was my fate to drink it straight. I'm a poet, but I don't know it. Not much of a playwright, though.
Grady, sir. Delbert Grady.
Bet your dog whistle. Thank you.
He got all these lines. Steve understood. Bet your dog whistle is just sort of a non sequitur. It's just there because it's there. And he knew. He knew drunk. He could talk drunk.
I don't believe so, sir. You're the caretaker here.
You've always been the caretaker here.
The same manager hired us both, you know.
Dig the underlighting. They look like they're in hell, don't they? That's really nice.
We all just had a blast doing this. And we had a real band come in and mime the musical number and all. And
that helped a lot, though. I mean, because they would, in between setups, would jam and play.
Yeah.
And we would play the music recorded. And that always lends a real air of, you know, of fun when you're shooting, when you got the music playing and everything. You feel like you're part of the sequence.
Well, it really comes to life. It gets to be large, and it gets to be something that's, if not epic, compared to three people in a hotel room. It's got scope to it. And it had to have been a relief for you, Pat, to suddenly get a pile of material that was more than just...
Well, very much like you, I was looking forward to this a lot. And it was fun. It was great fun. You know, when the footage starts coming in and it's so beautiful and challenging, it's exciting.
Wants us to leave. Yeah. Wendy. She personifies the 3 B's. Blonde, beautiful, full of bull. Yeah, women. Can't live with them, can't kill them.
Can't you, sir?
It's like an EC comic book. This is the real goods. This is fine.
If they could leave, just leave. I mean, it's me the manager wants, isn't it? I mean, I'm the one.
Is that real stubble on? That's real stubble on.
No, you know what? To be honest, none of the stubble in this movie is real, because we would shoot in one day. We would go back and forth from different scenes. I had usually on films, I'll create like a makeup chart, a continuity chart of an actor from the beginning to the end. And this movie was easy because he had very distinctive looks and within the timeline. And what we would do is we'd find that when we got towards the end where he would not be shaving and he would just get all stubbly, within a day we might shoot a scene that occurs a couple of days earlier, or so we would have to go back and forth, and the only way to do it properly is to start him clean shaven. So every day I would have to add whatever amount of stubble he needed for the shot. So it's funny, it's one of those.
That was the static electricity gun.
Yeah, and that like a flocker. And it's funny because it's one of the simplest, subtlest things that you go unnoticed, but sometimes one of the more time-consuming and complicated, is those little tiny things. And the fact that he had to keep rubbing his mouth, and it's looking at a shot like this is. There are many subtle things that Steven wanted to do to help show his character get weaker. The glassy eyes, the fact that his eyebrows became faint and he started getting circles around his eyes and a little raw in the face and not so, we started the movie out where he was full of color and life and he looked great. And as we go on, he just gets worse and worse and worse. And
that all has to be mapped out at the very beginning.
Because we would literally sometimes we would go back and forth.
Yeah, this is a very expressive shot. Particularly as it ends the sequence. Oh no, there's the bottle. The last thing you want to see is him taking a drink, or that there's any alcohol there in the first place. And a great reaction to drinking that bottle. But Weber could not have been more fun to work with. I mean, he always was in high spirits. He's a very funny guy and always being funny, and as soon as the camera starts rolling, bang, he's right into character.
I would say at this point that Jack Torrance, as played by Steven Weber, has reached stage 3 of craziness. This is pre-blow-up.
Your dream as a makeup artist is to work with actors who are really, pleasant and fun and have a lot of input, creative input. And, Weber is just, of all the actors I've worked with, we had such a great bonding experience. He's such a fun guy and a talented actor.
The handkerchief, the wiping the mouth with the handkerchief became his substitute for the aspirin chewing because he felt that he couldn't chew the aspirin all the time. And this was his first day of work. This is the first thing that he did when he came on set. And I was talking a little bit earlier in one of the other segments about how he was able to pick up the nuances of the character no matter where along that arc of character development it was. And this is a good example of it right here, because this was day one of Steve Weber's work. This entire sequence here was shot, I'm going to say, in the first week that we were on set.
Okay. You know what I say to that? Ah! To hell with you! Where the hell did you all go? Oh, excuse me. I don't mean to be ungrateful, but you didn't.
I would say that from the party scene on through here, where he's playing a lot of times for a lot of people who aren't there or people who come back and forth, that would be my favorite part. I love to watch Steve Weber work. I was terrifically impressed by how effortlessly he got into the part. If I were his wife, I'd be a little bit concerned about how easily he found that interior crazy person. And, yeah, he did that stunt.
Where's the juke? Play some damn bebop. Oh.
Where's the juke? Play some damn bebop. All straight from the script. And a lot of actors would say, well, I don't get this line. I don't know how to read this line. And Steve never had those issues. He understood because he's an extremely intelligent actor and he's literate. He understood from the jump. And in a lot of cases, that's not the case.
You aren't exactly dressed for the weather, sir, if you don't mind my saying.
I'll be rectified.
Do you have far to go?
Farther than I'd like.
If you'd like, sir, I can phone ahead to the gas station at the Route 270 junction.
The character actor who plays the man who trades him at the gas station for the Snowcat is Sam Raimi, the director.
This was a second unit shot that the crew went out and grabbed in the middle of the Rocky Mountains, a couple of miles away from the hotel, and real snowstorm, really great. Fortunately, in the Rocky Mountains, there's plenty of snow. It's just in Estes Park, particularly where the hotel was built, that there's almost none. Let's see, set. It's interesting to try and remember, okay, oh, that's right, anything right outside their apartment is the set. You know, the hallways themselves are classically ominous. Hallways, moving down hallways where you have a constantly shifting perspective. The panels, the different colors passing you by, and the tunnel effect, and again, the stairwell things and the like. Just constant threat of something that could be following you or leading you into these areas of danger. This was, I think, Rebecca's first day of shooting, because Weber isn't in it, and it was something we were able to do. And again, the low angle that gives a sense of threat. This is the scene where we were hearing clanking overhead, and it was this noise that would not stop. It would just clank, 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 and then a minute or two later, nothing, nothing, and then clank, clank, clank again, and we'd have to stop and reshoot. It was right as she passed under the curve. And so we sent the second assistant director up to shut him up, and there was nobody else in the hotel except our crew. And it was the first assistant director's room. The first assistant director was right there with me. No one was in that room, and we never did figure out what that sound was.
This, from here on out, is just a sort of domestic horror show where he takes after her with that mallet. Again, standards and practices said to us, you cannot show domestic violence on TV. And we're coming back with, that's the whole point of the show. The violence is what happens in homes all over America every day. It's probably happening somewhere now, right while we're talking about this. And if there's anything realistic in the show, it's not necessarily the ghost of the bartender or the ghost of the band leader. It's where the woman's husband shows up with a blunt instrument and takes after her. It happens all the time. And one of the things that I was interested in doing here was putting this in a context where the woman couldn't call 911. And I think still to this day, you see the scene where she's walking, looking for him. She's got the knife in her hand. And keeping in mind that all the time that at some point in this we're going to break into this, you know, for a Midol commercial or a Ford Escort commercial. So you have to work against that all the time. But I feel, and I felt when I wrote the book, that if it were just her and him up there, probably he would have beaten her to death. But with the little boy, the stakes go up. And she's fighting to defend her son rather than herself. And Rebecca got that completely. She understood it's not about me and him anymore. It's just about the boy, the innocent bystander, so to speak. We had a long talk about that. And she had some things to say about, well, what if I've had karate lessons? And I'm kind of like, come on, Rebecca. The average American housewife who's battered doesn't have karate lessons. What she's got is, you know, boot marks up her back from her abusive husband. And that's kind of the relationship that I wanted to show here. So, and of course, she's also facing for the first time the fact that everything her husband and son have intuited about the place is real. So she's trying to cope, too, with the idea that the supernatural is actually a fact.
Silence is such an important element in horror. Hand on shoulder. All we need is a cat scare.
Hurt my head.
And this is where standards and practices started to have real problems. Yep. Oh, they did not like any of this. But we were able to work it out with the help of the ABC executives. And I have to tell you that I never had problems with standards and practices like we did with the final 15 minutes of The Shining in general. And in particular, I'm going to say the next 4.5 minutes of this program were very difficult for them to understand, let alone okay. And we worked it out together. There's nothing on film that audiences aren't seeing. It's a case of we worked it through the screenplay until we got something that they felt like we could shoot. And even then, they were never really comfortable with it. And that doesn't bother me. I want people to be uncomfortable. Uncomfortable is what I do. Problems here with this scene, throwing the boy. But it's okay because, oh boy, he took the hit there, didn't he? Yay. Anyway, it was okay because he shows remorse at the end of the scene.
Rebecca is so good here. You know, it's a very bold performance.
What makes this work so well is that we understand perfectly well that he's not done. Even for people who haven't read the story, they know that, and they've seen enough movies to know that it's just not over yet. Can't be over yet. And this is a fairly extended piece of work, too. I think that from here until the end of the show, it's got to be 20-25 minutes. And it's pretty much nonstop terror from this point out, which is what you do it for. It's like the payoff of a really good joke, only it's the sort of joke where you scream instead of laugh.
It's the hotel.
Yes. Yes.
Poos, I told you.
Yes, you did.
She understands that Jack is not responsible. And I had a lot of feminists come up to me and say, well, you let him off the hook, didn't you? And I said, we're in the Twilight Zone now. It's a little different here.
Everyone loses their temper. Everyone feels like, oh, God, I'd love to just get out of here and shut this damn kid up and shut your mouth and leave me alone. Let me do my thing. But our social responsibility keeps us in check, which is a good thing, and it's supposed to. This is about the boiler that is on the verge of exploding within any one of us at any moment, being driven so far. Most of us are never going to be driven that far that we blow up. But in this case, it's alcoholism. It's trying to create. This guy is a writer who doesn't write, who hasn't written, and there are plenty of those in the world. He is unable to provide for his family in a way that he feels a man needs to be. He has a very intelligent, very intuitive child who loves him desperately, and he can't return that love because of his failed responsibility to his family. He can't respect himself because he can't even keep from taking a drink, and the alcohol that contributes to it. And, you know, his boiler finally explodes, and he's not a hero, although he does make some sort of restitution at the end. But this really is about family responsibility and human responsibility to each other.
When it comes to inspiring something like this, I told the story on another disc probably by the time people get this about going up to the hotel and seeing everybody checking out and wondering what it would be like to be the caretaker and spend the winter and going on from there. And it's almost always a case of you see a little something and then you say, well, what if I added one more element? What if I just juiced it with a little bit of rocket fuel, a little bit more? And sometimes you say to yourself, well, what about the fairy tale implications? There's Bluebeard in the room in 217, and here it's like the three little pigs. I'll huff and I'll puff and blow the house down. I think that he even says that at one point. So sometimes you're able to play with those classical elements too. They all still work. They're all still good. I like to tell people sometimes, they'll say, well, where do you get your ideas? And I'll say, I get them from used idea shop in Utica, New York, because they're still good. There's still a lot of good use in that stuff. A lot of people will say, well, you're not the most inventive, creative guy in the world, and my response is, no, probably that's true. There's a lot of good use in some of those ideas. You just kind of spin them around, turn them on their head, and see if you can do something new.
When we were inside that meat locker, where all of the cans of food and everything are, that's a real place. There are no windows. There's no other way out. There's that one door. So you've got a crew of people in this tiny room, the camera department, everybody else, as few as possible, but it's me and it's Weber and it's Shelley and it's his crew and it's whomever. We flipped out. We were shut in there shooting this stuff, and the thinness of the oxygen and the circumstances of Weber going crazy inside the room, we all just lost it and started cracking each other up. He started it with some line, I forget what it was, with some joke. Everybody just roared. And then I started doing Lucille Ball impressions, and everybody took it from there. And it was so difficult to maintain in there. But it was also really hilarious and a lot of fun. And when we came out giggling, nobody knew what the hell had been going on in there. The boiler is very central to this story. It's probably the most potent symbol, other than a human symbol, in the show. Steve made it very clear that it's no coincidence that the film opens with the boiler and being told about letting off the steam, releasing it. We all need to be relieved of the tensions and responsibilities that hang heavily on our shoulders. And in Jack's case, he's not very good at managing that. And he's being overtaken by forces more powerful than his own. And that boiler is going to blow. Not only the copper boiler in the movie, but the one within Jack's psyche. And that's something that we keep cutting back. We see that thing building up, and we know it's going to blow. And we're constantly being reminded of that.
I'm sorry, Jack.
You're out of your mind,
Now this is Sam Raimi, the director of the Evil Dead movies and Spider-Man and all of that. He was in The Stand and then came back to do this. I love Sam. He's just the sweetest guy in the world, and he loves to act. And he had a great time. We brought him out to Colorado. And after The Stand, he actually hired me to do work on the last day of The Quick and the Dead, where I was one of Gene Hackman's henchmen, and I hung Gary Sinise, who, of course, was the star of The Stand. So we kind of returned the favor to each other. So, Sam, I'm ready for my part in Spider-Man 2. So anyway, back in the pantry with Weber, and again, very hard to maintain control here. He's a remarkable actor that he was able to switch it on and off like this, especially with this kind of coverage here.
I will. Just let me out of here.
And if this is in his head, who opened the door from the other side? Suddenly things are becoming a little more earthbound.
Just let me out, Grady. Let me out, and I'll show you how wrong they are. Show all of them.
You would bring us your son?
Yes. Yes!
There are a lot of different scenes that resonate with me for different reasons. I really like the 217 scene, the bathtub and all. I just think we were able to build something that really was frightening, really was suspenseful, in a way that you don't get to see on television, or even in a lot of movies for that matter. I think all of the elements gelled in that regard. I really like the fireplace scene between Steve and Rebecca because It's entirely human. It's not monster movie. There's no effects. There's nothing going on except a dynamic between the two of them. The potency of the final battle between Jack and Wendy is very powerful. I think that played really well. So it's nice when I come back and see something and I still go, that kind of works. Because more often than not, you look back and I look back and I say, God, what would have made this better is if I had done it this way. I mean, you can't do films you can't be proud of, and I'm certainly proud of this. But I also see, like, oh man, if I'd only had the dialogue play a little quicker this way, or if only I'd shot it this way, or if only I had the foresight to handle it in such a way. So when you see scenes like that you feel good about, it's such a pleasant surprise.
Remember how many takes of the ball coming down the stairs, second unit?
Yeah. Oh, there were a lot of takes. We were off in the other part of the hotel as they're trying to get that bouncing ball to work properly. And
It was about 16, I believe, and I think they printed them all.
Well, second unit usually prints everything. Here's another one where the moving camera kind of fought the effect. You couldn't tell that chair just leaped off the table because the camera is moving with her. But finally, as she gets closer, it's obvious that what's going on there. Music helps. I think from here on out until the final confrontation, there's a lot of power here, and she is so good in her despair and her fear and just conveying all of the complex emotions of what's gone on wrong with her relationship. I think she's really done a masterful job here. Now Wendy is a witness to the supernatural becoming real, and the ghost being led by Cynthia once again. She still has that dress, I think. And I wanted to do something of the ghost disappearing, not just fading them out. And so there's this kind of nice blur left in their wake that goes away that Boyd did a beautiful job of. It's subtle but wonderful. And this is actually a motion control shot here with the fading of the red room. Not many of those done anymore because digital technology has gotten so good. You can do a move and make your effect take place. But motion control, we had to hammer in, screw in the tracks to repeat the move with a computerized camera move that's identical with red room written on the door and without it written on the door. And if you plan it for 3 hours, it will be at least 6, probably 9, just to get the name, just to get red rum fading off that door in a move. And there's nice kind of high angle looks to make her seem so much more vulnerable to all that's around her in this room. And now she's seeing the bottles the way her husband did. Now there's no question in her mind that she is in danger. She's hearing things that are happening. The confetti is falling on her. You know, there's no hiding from it now.
You play with me all you want, but you're not taking my son. You're never taking my son!
Also her first day, I believe. I think this final confrontation that takes place with Jack is as potent as anything I've ever seen on television. There's a brutality to it that both embarrasses and horrifies me, and yet it's so effective. It's hard for me to watch, and I know how it was done, and I know it was all fake and everything, but the brutalization of a woman by a man is something that is very difficult for me to take. It was hard to shoot, even though it was all fake.
You scared me.
Well, sure I did. You scare easy, Wendy. That's why you want to leave.
The lead up to this confrontation is obviously dangerous, and there's this sense of cat and mouse going on here.
You're better off without that.
This was a long sequence to shoot because it was done in a lot of pieces. When there's a lot of action, as there's about to be, you just have to capture every angle, and this was really, as I recall, took a real long time to do. The camera was everywhere, and you have to be also safe when swinging a mallet. I mean, we had several mallets. One was a real heavy-duty one made of wood, and then two replicas, at least two replicas, of varying densities of rubber and plastic.
You were never really my friend.
I think that's the real one right there. Yeah, that was the real one. And so, you know, we had to be careful not to smack. That wasn't the real one. That was the plastic one, but still.
I don't think anybody really expects to see that happen, especially on television, even if you've read the book. And once that happens, you realize, oh my God, anything can happen now. This is going far.
Yes, sirree, Bob!
Now, that was a real close one. There was really a stunt woman there whose head I missed by a fraction of an inch. And that was... Everybody had to really hold their breath while I did it. Because it was really some risk involved, some real risk.
Run, Daddy! Run and hide! Run and hide!
Let's end this now, sweetheart. Right?
I was definitely having fun doing this. Being a real sick bastard.
This is the miniature hotel that shot. I'd forgotten we had establishing miniature shots like that. Yes, put on your shoes. And make sure you see that croquet ball is in the shot, which we set up earlier.
Hi, Daddy! Daddy's mad at Mommy. Daddy finally got tired of listening to her faithless, hateful, spiteful, cowardly nagging. And
this is not something you expect from that guy from Wings. You know, it is such a wonderful change of pace for him that I think it makes it even more potent. Here's a guy most famous for a successful sitcom, losing it to the point of beating the crap out of his wife with a mallet, going after his son with homicidal intent. I mean, this is maybe even more potent than having someone familiar from playing a part like this. Someone who you've seen go crazy, who you've seen lose control. This is a guy who's been fun and likable and jokey and all of that, and who is like that in real life. And then to be able to reach this point of beyond control is powerful.
I think people definitely responded in the way that we wanted them to. It was repulsive and scary.
I'll be better soon. When you're dead, when your miserable, quacking tongue is finally just a rotting piece of meat inside your head.
And that line I loved. That's a real great Stephen King line. Miserable quacking tongue, rotting like a piece of meat in your head.
Oh!
I like when people see this who have not read the book, that their familiarity is only with the Kubrick film because there are surprises in it. Not to compare one to another, because they're two different animals, but I just like that people have expectations in one direction, and that's not where we go, that it goes in different directions. This, I thought, there's an effect here that's so subtle you can't tell it's an effect. Boyd did it so well. Boyd Shermis did it so well. It was something I didn't even know you could do at this point. She throws that ball, and when it bounces off, it leaves a cut in his forehead that was digitally placed and tracked flawlessly so that it's on his head as he moves and reacts.
This is Bill again. Here's where we started. How literal could we go with the book and the script? Because in the book, especially, the croquet ball is so heavy and hard. He describes it that it basically crushes his face, and that the entire rest of the movie, he's chasing them around the hotel with his face is just a bloody pulp, like a wet paper bag. And we thought, well, how can we do that on TV? Another one of our fun little zombies.
Yeah.
And so it amazes me that ABC, let us go as bloody. I mean, not that we
well,
really
and they didn't see this until they saw Dailies.
Yeah, exactly.
So nobody said, "Wait, you can't do that."
Can't do that. And we just kind of
went
with,
we shot it.
Yeah, we went with what worked, I guess, for the shot.
Yeah. And that, God, it's so hard to look at, and that's not too easy either. But, there's a brace that goes between the legs, and the kick hits the brace.
Those were the 2 points that ABC did object, right there, when he hit her in the hallway and she kicked him back.
Right.
And also with the knife coming right up here, or the razor blade. But somehow,
that's right. That's the other one.
Steve came into the defense of having these things in there.
Well, the 2 cuts we had to make for broadcast standards were one of the hits with the mallet to her stomach. I think he hit her twice in the lobby. And it was one of the slices with the razor blade in the bathroom, which is coming right up here.
We would spend, Stephen took an hour and a half, sometimes it was like a little over an hour to get made up for this end sequence stuff, because he actually has like little swollen appliances on his face. And when we got to this scene with the breaking through the door, which is the equivalent of the famous
here's Johnny. Yeah.
Here's Johnny scene. The casual makeup room talk. When you're joking around, we were discussing. If he were to come up with, because in the script, I guess it had an expression that he said when he came.
Right, I forget what it was. We kept trying to find what it would be.
Yeah, and he kept. I think I still have it in my notes. Like a list a mile long of possible "here's Johnny" type lines.
I think he and I and Steve all came up with our own lists, and the simplest one is the one he used. And this was a cheap trick, just hiding Grady behind him and stepping out. Sometimes simple is best. And frankly, if you can make an effect happen on the set rather than with CGI, I'm all for it. There's something, I think CGI is so over. Well, here's what we use. Boo. Who wrote that? I don't know if that was King or Weber who came up with that.
I think it may have been Weber.
Yeah.
Coming, sweetheart. Here comes Papa Bear.
No! The predominance of CGI, which has no weight and has no heft, and is not in the scene when you're shooting it, really takes a lot of the believability out of it. And if anything can happen, who cares when it does? Whereas when you've got a razor blade in your hand, this is so hard to watch. Yes, yeah. And we did cut the second slashing out, and I think that was a good choice. Who needs it more than once?
Mr. Torrance. Halloran's coming.
You'll notice that Grady, he looks more normal now. I think as the ghosts get stronger, the more real they became. I think that was one of our arguments for why they start out ghostly and start to get more and more real until we're back at the end when they're losing some of their grip.
we had this rinky-dink little green glass vase sitting next to this giant lamp right here in the foreground. Now, if you're going nuts, you're going to selectively smash that little green vase. So I said, you know what, Steve? I'm going to be irresponsible, but we got to smash that lamp. We've set this up this way. You got to do it. So I'm sorry. We paid for the lamp, but something had to be sacrificed in the name of fine drama. So. And this, of course, was just a box outside the window filled with chipped ice that looked like snow. No way out there.
That's a fun little homage to the movie, though, too. Her trying to get out that little window, and now there's like no way she can get out the window.
An interesting thing happened. I had loaned tapes of the show, finished, to Clive Barker. The show was finished 5 months before it aired. And Clive, who is a friend of mine and with whom I've collaborated a couple of times, took them to Hawaii on vacation to watch with him. And when he came back, he said, this last hour has to be as powerful as anything in theaters. How did you get it on the air? This from the creator of Hellraiser and all those books that he has done was, I guess, a compliment.
My second makeup artist, a gentleman by the name of Douglas Noe, said the coldest time he'd ever spent in his life was lying in the back of this snowcat with Melvin Van Peebles just to provide like little frost for his mustache and give him tissues. But he was stuck in there for all night long.
I think those crouching lions look really great. Those were puppeted. Those were not CGI. The crouches and all, just a simple move, but man, I thought that XFX pulled that off.
Yes,
great.
Steve Johnson is such a big Stephen King fan and was so excited to do The Stand and indeed do The Shining that he really tried to go to every length to try to make Stephen and Mick happy. And he really went to great lengths to try to on our budget try to get those topiary animals to work properly. And it's you don't realize, but the most difficult thing sometimes is just the elements, and that the cold weather was the hardest thing about trying to get those things to work.
Here's one you don't expect either.
Publishers Clearinghouse winner. And here's your prize. No!
You do not expect to see that thing connect. It was a well-padded stuntman with a foam mallet, but still, that couldn't have felt good, regardless.
Come along and be my party doll. Come along and be
Steve was not familiar with Party Doll, which surprised me because he's so knowledgeable about past pop records. So he had to be coached on the melody. It's a little off a couple of times.
You're gonna wet your pants. Not that you were wearing any pants at the time.
Please, Jack.
When I was putting together our package for the Emmy Awards, television Emmys, we had to edit together a 20-minute reel of all the makeup effects and various things that we did. And one of the things that I noticed the more we wrote about it and the more we showed it was scenes like this where we actually did so many subtle things to Weber's face to make him look more evil and drawn out, and actually he has little tiny like prosthetic pieces around his eyes to make his eyes more twisted and kind of like hollowed out and evil. Not to mention the continuity with the blood and everything.
The highest importance, and time has grown.
And this was a great effect that we played around with as well. I don't know if I think we see it again.
No, we do see it.
Where we actually used invisible UV makeup. That we go into a close-up, I think, and then
it's a two-shot.
Yeah, and we ramp up the UV, a UV light, and actually shows like a skull-like.
But I had to change the color in post-production,
right,
because this. Yeah. So we turn up that light, and it turned purple. So we took all the purple out of the shot in the post-production here.
And it was something I think that was in the script that Stephen had written, that like when we saw this character, he appeared to glow like unnaturally, like a skull. So this was our way of, and it was cool because it was actually practical on set. You saw his face glow like that. It was really neat.
piece was very well received. Again, it did not become the ratings blockbuster that The Stand was, but we were nominated for a handful of Emmys. I think we got sound and makeup. The actors were not singled out, and that disappointed me. And, you know, they were mostly the technicians. Same with The Stand, which got something like 7 nominations and won 3 or 4. But again, they were for technical things. I was very disappointed not to see some really fine performances rewarded. But, you know, in all the years I've been doing this, I've never even watched the Emmys in my life, even when shows of mine have been nominated. It just is not something that interests me too well. But the reviews were extremely gratifying and very surprising. They were incredibly good. I remember the first time TV Guide ever gave anything a 10, and that was this. But, you know, it's really all about feeling you've done your best work, and you know, the awards are given for many reasons, some of them political, some of them quality, and all of that stuff, and I just don't know how those work. And you know, it's certainly not why people who care about movies make movies. But the interesting thing again is trying to deal in the 7-act structure and 3 nights of a miniseries, because each act has to be self-contained, has to build and release. You have to end on a build and then catch up again after the commercials for cough drops and used cars and everything else are gone through. And then you come back to a scene like this with the power, with a rampaging, recovering alcoholic father who's not recovering so well after his beautiful little 7-year-old boy who's sucked into a maelstrom of horror and of precognizant terror, and trying to come out the other end okay. And that's kind of the sentimental side of Stephen King, and it's something that I admit to as well, as having that side that likes to see human beings come out okay, even if Dad doesn't. Personally, I had a questionable relationship with my father in my youth that I was lucky enough to see come full circle before he passed away a couple of years ago. And, you know, it makes it particularly personal to watch something like this, too.
This is the sequence that I was looking forward to doing the most and probably pressured myself too much about, where I'm at the height of my insanity here. And I'm wearing enough makeup to indicate that. There I am, handsome.
In the book, Tony was an apparition that Danny saw and spoke to, and was kind of a spirit guide for him, as opposed to the little boy who lives in my mouth that Kubrick did, which is a great concept. Just that line, the little boy who lives in my mouth, is a fantastic line that I don't know if Kubrick came up with or who. But, you know, the wiggling finger and the voice, hello, Mrs. Torrance, you know, it worked for the movie, but it was conceptually far afield from what was done in the book. And although I'm not crazy about the floating shots of Tony in this show, I do like who he becomes and who he is revealed to be. And again, it brings it to a much more personal level. Now, Pat had to cut this real tight. Rebecca just kept slapping him like crazy.
You know, the big scene coming up here with father and son, the makeup has been getting progressively bloodier over the last few scenes, quicker than it would have if it were just a simple injury to the head. And I think it's spectacular and really contributes to the... Bill, you want to talk about that?
Well,
what you guys decided to do?
I'll never forget that. I think in the script it said that at this point, Jack is not really even human. I mean, it said something about like he's almost a non-human entity. And, you know, I mean, I obviously did what you see, but it's, you know, if it wasn't on Weber, you know, it wouldn't have been half as effective. I mean, Weber really brought it to life.
His final descent here is something that I just love. I just think he did a great job with it. The physical look is one thing, and a lot of that is makeup, but so much of it comes from within him. But the haunt and what comes up here when he fights his way out of his possession briefly is really quite a wonderful revelatory moment for him. Again, if you're only familiar with him as a sitcom actor, it's a really great moment.
Just as pretty. And now it's time for you to take your medicine. And for me to do my fatherly duty by you, little as I might like it.
You're not my daddy.
Such a smart little boy it is. Or thinks it is. Who else would I be?
Just another Halloween mask. The hotel needs you because I won't let it into my head anymore. You don't.
See, these are the moments that really attracted me to this role. The moments that, for just a moment, he was pulled out of it by his love for his kid. But then he just slips right back into hammy malevolence. These types of scenes you can't do very many times because you can only destroy a set so many times.
I'm gonna be the king.
It's interesting, again, with the Dick Halloran character, those of you who are only familiar with the Kubrick film expect him to be killed by an axe by Jack Torrance. And that never happened in the book. And it's interesting that he survives in the book. And in this, I think it's a great moment. And again, a surprise if you're used to him being killed.
And Mick and I talked about making these transitions painful at this point, that they're the equivalent of real cold turkey withdrawals.
Here, the pain that Jack Torrance feels here as he briefly can look out of his possessed shell and see his son, his beautiful son, whom he has endangered, is so painful to watch. And then when you see it give way again to the beast that has overtaken him, it's a really, for me, it's a great moment. There's no way of saying how it can affect any other individual, but and Weber was very insecure about this. He said, wait, did I think maybe I went too far, or was it the right time, or was it here and there? And it's hard to tell from the inside looking out. And again, my job is to be the outside viewer to give it the context, and I can be wrong, but he trusted me. And I sure trusted him. He's just great. That struggle within is something that it's just so difficult to do. He makes it physical. He makes it more than merely haunted. But you feel the physical pain of this thing racking him from within. And it took a lot of time to do, and there wasn't much joking around on the set at this point. I mean, it was so important to do it right and to not shake his attention. We really gave him all that quiet. I cleared the set as much as possible, too. There were very few people on the set when we shot this scene.
No! Oh, no! No!
We tried to keep as close to continuity as possible because of having to build up to that. Obviously, you can't keep it all in continuity, but as far as First, we shot everything in the hotel during the winter and during almost everything up front. Then we moved to the stages in Denver and tried to play everything in order there. And then we came back for the last 2 weeks.
Again, in keeping with the book, I mean, it's not a horror story, although it has obviously all the trappings of it. It's a story about human beings and about love and about addiction and about fear and probably as a writer, when he wrote this, I would say probably that Stephen King wanted redemption. Nobody sets out to become an abusive, addictive alcoholic or any holic. That underneath or within that abusive person is a vulnerable, in this case, father, loving father. So it is nice that we see him fight back and ultimately, triumph.
This is the redemption scene where he's finally able to, as you see this battle going on between his good angel and his bad angel, and he's finally able to face the demons inside and turn away, which is a scene that we never get in the Kubrick version. The Kubrick version, the conflict between the son and the father is unresolved. And in this one it is. He's able to choose his son rather than destruction.
The book had redemption as part of its theme, and for Jack Torrance to have gone through everything and not to have grown, even if it's in his own death, would have been a mistake. Because, again, I mean for this, I don't mean for the movie, but we're doing the book, and the book is about the redemption of Jack Torrance, who did some horrible things. I mean, right up front, he tells the story of him beating up a high school kid that he was teaching. That's not the most sympathetic thing a character can do, who's your lead character for 6 hours. But the tears he's able to spill there, and Cortland too, both of those aren't prop tears. Those are real.
Kissin', that's what I've been missing. Earlier on is very malevolent, but now it's kind of the thing that is the salve, for Jack, I guess.
Hurry, you fool!
Daddy, stop them! They're getting stronger!
No, Daddy, no! No, Daddy, don't let them!
They're not real!
Again, I was trying to figure a way that we could see hands pass through or body pass through without it just being 2 layers and a dissolve. And Boyd was able to come up with an interesting CG effect where he actually broke through the other body and the hand breaking through. And the CG lion coming up over the wall is something I think works nicely. We really had to keep the number of CG effects to a minimum, not only for budgetary reasons, but just to not overplay it.
There's Mr. Frank Darabont.
There's Darabont, yeah.
This is Boyd Shermis here again, visual effects supervisor. One of the fun parts of the film for me was to do the explosion of the hotel. I always enjoy blowing things up. And certainly building a miniature is a lot of fun for anybody. You get to spend a lot of time working all the right details in and just making sure that it's looking exactly like the real thing. And going to photograph it, setting up several high-speed cameras, dealing with pyrotechnicians. We built the miniature as an 8-scale miniature, I think, and set it out in a parking lot and lined it all up for the various shots that we had planned.
It was like 10 feet tall or something.
Just
8
about.
feet.
It was like 8 feet tall and I think like 20 some odd feet wide, and it's fairly deep as well. built from lightweight balsa so that it would come apart and burn very quickly. We had Thane Morris working our pyrotechnics for that one, and we must have had 6 or 8 cameras running on it at any given time. And we shot that, I think, at about 250 frames a second to get the explosion to work.
And the explosion didn't exactly work the way we intended.
No, it did not. Our good friend Thane had sort of preloaded it so that it all went up very quickly and all at once, and it was supposed to come, blow a few windows at a time. Yeah. And that was a little bit disappointing, but when it went, it really went.
It really did. But, and so that was composited, some of the flames were composited into the actual hotel for that final shot of the snowcat leaving and everything, and you had to paint in the tracks on the snowcat.
Yeah, that was probably one of the more difficult single shots in the film. It was a very elaborate matte painting that was done by Robert Schifo. We used an original live-action photographic plate that had no snow in it whatsoever, but it was the right angle, and it had a lineup of the hotel in it. And we ended up putting the miniature of the hotel into the background on fire and putting in all the snow and all the snow all over the trees and everything, and allowing the snowcat to drive down into the foreground, revealing the tracks of the snowcat and kicking up snow everywhere. I think it ended up being one of the finest shots in the film, personally.
All of the colors, it's real important to bring us back to a world that's vibrant and alive and almost glowing. So this is several years later, and yet the makeup was very subtle in the changes here.
Yeah, we did want to age Rebecca and age Melvin, but it's so subtle because within 10 years, women obviously like to think of themselves as never aging. So, the makeup on Rebecca, even though she does have just the slightest bit more age about her, little wrinkles around the eyes and around the mouth. And Melvin, the biggest change is just, whitening his beard. I mean, he'll probably look that way until he's in his 90s. But, yeah, it was just a subtle thing. And the best thing to do in these circumstances is to less is more, because if you go too much, it takes you out.
This was kind of a painful scene to do. Will Horniff, who played Tony, who's actually Danny 10 years later, the Danny of the future, really found it next to impossible to cry. And so I said, what has happened that has ever really made you sad? Anything that's happened? Well, sometimes my mom works really hard and it's tough on her, and it was just really tough because he had not really had anything difficult. And to me, what drove it was I had lost a brother about 5 years previous to this, and it was a really difficult time for me, and I had to talk to him about it for a while. And I kind of lost it, and it was a really tough time for me to talk to him about that. And I actually was in tears remembering that, and Will started crying, and he said, "Can we roll now?" And so as tough as it was to experience, it was something that Will had gotten something from, and it was really great. And then to see this communication, there's the shot right there, the tears are very genuine, and to see that communication with his dead father is just, I think it's a magical moment. And Weber, seeing him smiling and healthy and full all over again, even as a ghost, is something that for me is quite potent. And the last image, of course, is the dead remains of the hotel.
Is the sign in the book?
Is the sign in the book? I don't remember.
Did you guys
I've lived with this version for so long, I don't know. But I do love that we see not only the ghosts of the Overlook, but the veritable ghost of the Overlook in the very last shot. And it's again, a powerful moment. And of course, everything there was just shot in a field right next to the hotel, so we'd get the same mountains for the background and the like, the swings and stuff. And then the final reveal of the actual ghost of the Overlook Hotel. And another wonderful Boyd Sherman CG shot. Rather than just seeing a see-through version of it, I like the idea of the ripple of the land beyond and a flicker of its density. And that is the miniseries version of Stephen King's The Shining.
This is Stephen Weber. I hope you enjoyed watching Stephen King's The Shining as much as we all did working on it.
It was great to see this again. This is like snapshots from my past. It's not that long ago, but it's a while back. And it all looks fresh. You've got the boiler as a perfect metaphor for the subconscious mind, getting ready to go into some kind of a total meltdown. And it all works for me. So thanks for coming along. This is Stephen King.
I appreciate everybody's joining us on this little journey, and that we'll put that to bed.